This is Gerardo Del Real along with my co-host, Mr. Nick Hodge. This is episode 15 of Bizarro World. It is Good Friday. We tape on Friday. We record on Friday. We publish on Monday. So we hope everyone's having a good Friday and that everybody had a great Easter. No rest for the wicked, Mr. Hodge. You and I are knocking the podcast out as always. Here we are. How are you doing, sir?
Christ has died, hallelujah, Christ is risen, hallelujah, Christ will come again, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Preach,
You
Brother
forgot
Nick.
the religious.
Preach, Brother Nick. As I said, no rest for the wicked, so here we are. We're going to talk gold. We're going to talk cannabis. We're going to talk Lil Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus. I'm going to ask Nick if Game of Thrones made him feel good. Was it satisfying after waiting a year and a half? Lots to get to. Notre Dame and the fake outrage there. But as always, I think we should start with the market, Nick. What do you think of the gold space?
I don't know about many of those things you just talked about. This is going to be an interesting podcast. Who is Lil Nas? Jesus, I'm old.
Let's start with Lil Nas X. No. I didn't know who Lil Nas X was. Let's start there, and then we'll segue back to the markets, the gold market, and talk cannabis and cryptos a bit, because that's getting really interesting there on that side. So the backstory is this. About a month or two ago, there's this young teenager out of Atlanta that goes by the name of Lil Nas X, right? And so he's got this song called Old Town Road that incorporates, a really catchy like country chorus and beats. But because he's from Atlanta and he's young, he grew up in that era of, the big bass drums and the trap music. So the backdrop to this country song has a traditional down south kind of a hip hop bounce to it, production wise. If you read the lyrics, it's all about the horses out back and the barn and a night out on the town and, good old fashioned traditional country song. So this kid put it out independently. Everybody loved it because, it's kind of what I say. I think deep down, especially the younger generation, everybody wants to be inclusive. Everybody wants to have a good time together, regardless of background, right? So it was very well received, so much so that it went to the top of the country charts. The Country Music Association said, no. We are not letting this little hip-hop kid from Atlanta infiltrate our charts. And they actually said that the music did not incorporate enough of the elements that traditional country, watch the verbiage, right? That traditional country incorporated. So they disqualified it from the country charts and they kicked them out. So Billy Ray Cyrus hears the song and loves it. Billy Ray Cyrus finds out that the Country Music Association decided to kick him out. And it was Billboard. I'm sorry. It was the Billboard music charts kicked him out from the charts. And he said, oh, no way. This is a country song. And he got on it and they made an official song of it. So that's now surged all the way to the top of the charts. John Rich came out and said, I remember when country music in the 70s, when Johnny Cash came out, they said he wasn't country enough. And so John Rich defended it and said, I think the fans should decide. If the fans voted on there and the fans want to hear it, it's a country song. If the fans don't want to hear it, then nobody will hear it and it won't make its way up the charts. So that's the background on it. It was really interesting, but now you know who Lil Nas X is.
I knew I liked that guy, John Rich.
Yeah, he sticks to his guns. There's a lot that I disagree with, but it's always thought out. It always comes, I feel like, from a good place. So, I remember when the whole situation with Colin Kaepernick and the NFL was happening. He had some things to say that I didn't agree with, but I kind of felt and I sensed that it came from a good place. It wasn't coming from a mean-spirited place. It was coming from a place where he really loves the country and really loves veterans and is really out there with his money and his actions backing all good causes for veterans. And he felt it was genuinely disrespectful, which however you felt about why Colin was doing it, I also understand the people that aren't bigoted and aren't racist and really just felt that it was disrespectful and that there were better ways to do that. So I thought both points, were valid. So yeah, good for John Rich. Other people, Keith Urban came and defended and defended the kid and offered up his own cover of Old Town Road. And so, yeah, very interesting.
I want to know what traditional elements of country music are because as someone who listened to country music for a very long time in the 80s and 90s, and even the early 2000s before it seemingly took a turn to crossover pop or whatever, along with, when Taylor Swift came along, and also because it had to sell CDs and to get downloads because just the music industry was sort of changing. But, when I turn on modern country music now, it's nothing even what I remember. Forget, Waylon and the Boys and Johnny Cash and all that. What you hear today is completely different anyway. So who's to say what traditional country music is? That's what really sticks out to me.
Well, that's what stuck out to me, and the choice of words, to be honest, seems very, very strategic. I won't speculate and say that it's racist and bigoted. I will say at the very least it was mean-spirited. When country fans say this cover of this song is great, it's something we can dance to, we can drink to, we can have fun to, and we can do that in a country setting, who are you? The Billboard people and the Hot Country Songs chart people to come in and say, no, you don't get to decide that's a country song. We do. So, kudos to Mr. Cyrus and Keith Urban and John Rich and, everybody else that kind of moved that forward. You want me to play you a quick sample? I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. As you all know, we freestyle most of this podcast and we record live. We don't edit. So I'll play you a quick sample if you want it, Nick.
Sure.
All right, let's see if it plays. If it doesn't, guys, I apologize ahead of time. Here we go. Tell me that doesn't sound country, Nick.
I can't hear it. We'll have to get Tim, the editing wizard, to drop a clip in there. We can do it.
There you go. We'll put a link. We'll let the people decide. It's a catchy little song. I have a couple of people, close friends, that are very, very into country. And they said the lyrics are cheesy as hell, but man, I can't stop singing and dancing to it. So that was their take on it.
There you go. It just sounds kind of like you said, just because of who it is, because I can remember whether it's Uncle Cracker or Jimmy Buffett or some other artists back in the day, Kid Rock, for example, who have done some crossover stuff in the country, and you don't really hear any of the kickbacks. So I think it's because it was Lil Nas X.
Agreed. So there we covered Lil Nas X. Hopefully we introduced a cool little bop to people that they can have fun to. On a side note, I went to a country show just last week. We went and saw, my wife and I, and then the couple of friends that I referenced there that are really big country heads. We saw the Brothers Osborne live, and man, they were amazing. They have a song called Weed, Willie, and Whiskey. Great song.
I've seen that, actually. I've seen and I've heard. Yeah, good stuff. Glad you got to see them.
It was incredible. Those guys sound amazing live. Encourage anybody, if they get a chance to see that live show, go check that out. That's fun. All right, Nick. So Good Friday. Let's talk gold. What do you think? We're down about the 1275 level. We had said that, we needed to hold between 1270 and 1285. So far, it looks like that range is holding. I have thoughts. I'd love to hear yours.
Not too much. Not reading too much into it. It's a very light week. Not a lot of eyes on the market. Holiday week. Has felt a bit slippery in the past couple of days, but like you said, has held the 1270 mark. And honestly, when you got the S&P ripping to really close to new all-time highs as a result of Fed actions that we've discussed over the past couple of weeks, it's kind of tough to argue with where capital wants to go. It wants to go into U.S. equities, and I'm fine with that for now.
Perfect. One thing that stands out to me, and you mentioned it, I think you just said it a different way, is the lack of volatility right now. You know, in a low volatility environment like the one we've had the past week or so, where volumes are light, everybody took off early for vacation. I think that we shouldn't read too much into this week. I will say, however, that next week will be an important week for the gold space. So I continue insisting that gold surge will happen towards the later part of the second half of this year, but we'll see how that plays out. I know I see the dollar surged over 97 again, so it's held in there pretty well. Let's see where we're at next week.
Agreed. Let people get back to their desk, including me from having this kid. I was not paying too close of attention either. So, yeah, let people get back to their desk, and we'll see what it is on a real trading week.
I like it. I know that you haven't been following a lot, Nick. I gotta imagine that you saw the Canopy buyout for, I believe it was like 3.4 billion, and I'm freestyling, so correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it is. They bought acreage for 3.4 billion in a cross-border pot deal. Did you get a chance to take that in?
But Gerardo, they got an option to buy acreage.
Oh, language
because
matters.
it's not
Just like
legal
Lil Nas X.
in the United
language
States.
matters.
Yeah.
I'm going to tie this to Lil Nas X. Language matters, people. They have an option. Preach, brother Nick.
No, that's it. They got an option because they can't buy them yet because of the cross-border rules between Canadian companies doing business in the United States and being listed on various exchanges in Canada and the United States. So basically, they can't buy Canopy, can't buy acreage, which is a big cannabis company in the United States, until it becomes legal. And so that's the kicks the option into gear. Once it becomes legal in the United States, that's what allows them to exercise their option. So, big deal. We've talked about Canopy on this podcast before as a first mover, sort of just taking the buckshot and Hoover approach. They've got now, I think in New York State, a hemp farm. They've got acreage now, literally and figuratively, the company acreage that they just bought, and lots of acreage in greenhouses elsewhere. So the biggest cannabis company in the world, at least publicly traded, and just a continuation really of what we've been seeing. Look, it's pot mania. I mean, you can't get away from it. There was a bunch of big Bloomberg pieces about it last week talking about how much the stocks have gone up, 25, 3,500% more in some cases in the past couple of years. And two, just how it's like real business now, right? And we're close to 420, so we can talk about 420 for a second, but it just, that used to just be for stoners or whatever. But now you're seeing analyst reports talking about like trying to quantify how much the sales are going to increase on 420. And it's quite crazy, man. It's like, what was the comparison I read? In the U.S., 4th of July is the biggest drinking holiday, and I think I read that beer sales go up between like 25 and 35% for the 4th of July. But for 420, cannabis sales ramp up over 100%. They more than double for that, the April 20th holiday. And so now we're trying to quantify this, right? What does that mean to a retailer? What does that mean to a producer? Like, how do they have to modify sales or logistics or whatever? What does that mean to quarterly cycles and lumpiness and revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So, look, from my seat, I don't know what it means. I'm not sure who gets bought out next. It seems like there's one or two major buyouts announced every week or two. It's good to see. Maybe not if you'd like some of that money to be in the mining space, of course, is another theme we've talked about. But it's not going away. A lot of people smoke weed. It's not even legal yet in all the states or at a federal level. And so you're seeing the big boys position. And I would just remind investors, if you're a little risk averse or you don't want to make a pure play into cannabis, one of the things we've highlighted here before is the company Constellation that owns more than half of Canopy already and kind of had to give Canopy permission to make this deal with acreage. They had to amend some warrants that they had with or in Canopy to allow them to make the deal. So that's it. That's my thoughts.
I'll tell you what stood out to me for all the talk of a pot bubble and how everybody's going to lose their shirts. You have a first mover like Canopy doing the transaction, a big one, but the 42% premium over acreage's 30-day average price was interesting to me. I thought that speaks volumes about the direction that a lot of the other more established companies that are legit companies, I think that speaks to the fact that they have a lot of runway left. And so for people calling, the cannabis speculative market a bubble, it very well may be. But for those that remember the rare earth bubble, for those that remember, the latest gold, the last gold bull market, the last great sustainable one, these can last for quite a while. So definitely don't go all in. But if you're comfortable with the space, do your due diligence. And it's definitely the beginning of a trend. I don't believe we're in the 5th or 6th inning of this thing. I think we're in the 2nd or 3rd inning because, as you mentioned, it's not even legal yet in most places.
That's what I keep pointing to. Yet, how can you have a bubble that comes and goes when you're not even allowed to, list companies on certain exchanges yet? Did you see that the so-called, U.S. weed ETF that came out last year that's going to be listed on, the Neo exchange, that this and that? It's not really going to have exposure. You're not going to be able to buy it. It's going to be a liquid, et cetera, et cetera. That's like early day stuff. That's not like there's a weed ETF on the NYSE stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we're not there yet.
Agreed. One last thought I want to share real quick. I think 420 may be the new Cinco de Mayo.
Margarita sounds good.
That's how I would brand that, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, you got the margarita holiday. Why not have the weed holiday? I mean, it's always sort of been celebrated among the weed culture and in, magazines like High Times and things like that. So, I mean, it's already got the branding is sort of right there.
Let's talk Bitcoin and crypto since we're on the market and we're talking about speculative markets. Last week we talked about Bitcoin making a run towards the 5,000 level. We're now at the 5,300 level despite the lack of volatility out there. Any thoughts there, Mr. Hodge?
No, same thing. You know how fast it can go. How fast it went up to nearly around $20,000 the last time it did. And so not really seeing a whole lot of talk about it. So it could come back very quickly for the same reasons that gold could come into a bull market, people wanting to diversify away a bit from markets at a record. And obviously, if they're willing to pay $20,000 before, it could get there again. And so I see it sitting at 5,300 now. We have to mention Hydro 66 again. You say we're biased. I say that's true, but 5,300 is it presents nice margins for people that mine correctly, for sure.
Well, we're biased because we're shareholders and we participated in the latest financing, and I'm biased because I'm likely going to be adding to that position here in the very near future if it stays at these levels. I think the company could and hopefully will do a better job soon of crystallizing for speculators just how much leverage there is past $4,000 Bitcoin. And hopefully we get more color there in the near future. But I think that's a heck of a speculation if you're looking for a real company with real data centers, a real team with real infrastructure, that has a real business model independent of crypto, but is definitely supercharged if you add $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 Bitcoin to the mix.
Exactly right.
Perfect. Let's switch gears a little bit on this Easter weekend. Let's talk the fake outrage about the Notre Dame fire. I would love to hear your thoughts, Mr. Hodge, on the fact that, one, obviously, this is a historical site that a lot of people are emotionally and historically invested into. So we definitely don't want to come off as belittling in any kind of way as to the significance of the fire and the damage there. With that being said, this is a place that has a ton of history, and naturally there are a lot of wealthy people, private individuals that came out and said, I'll give 100 million, I'll give 300 million, I'll give 200 million. Let's rebuild this now. People that have wealth in the billions where a couple of 100 million really isn't much. And so immediately we started seeing the fake outrage. Well, imagine if the EU or these wealthy speculators and investors donated some of that money to the crisis in Flint, Michigan. Yeah, I would have loved for that to happen. I would love for American entrepreneurs to donate to that cause and many of the other causes that could be solved and remedied through generous donations. That didn't happen, but man, the people that are pissed off about people donating privately earned capital to a project they want to see rebuilt because it's near and dear to their heart, yeah, I call bullshit on that. It's your money. You have the right to do every little bit that you want to rebuild this thing. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours, Nick.
You know, I'm a capitalist. You can do with your money as you please, though. I was thinking, my thoughts on this are evolving. I don't really know what I'm going to say even at this point, other than the Catholic Church has a fuck ton of money, and we've talked about how they should be taxed, et cetera. Why can't they pony up to fix their church? And that's really as far as I've gotten on that side of the outrage. Of course, the relics and the medieval architecture should be preserved and likely will be, and good on the billionaires for stepping up and going into their pockets to help that get done. Some of the other fake outrage I saw surrounding this was about people not donating to other churches that had burned down. Like, well, you donated to this one, why didn't you donate to that one? Whether they were referencing a black church that had been burnt down in the South or something else. And, you know, for me, that's entirely fake outrage. Like, because you choose to donate to one cause and you don't want to donate to another one, or not that you even don't want to, just that you didn't. You know, that's not cause for outrage. That's not cause for all caps and exclamation points. Let's move past that. And just moving past the outrage in general, some of the interesting, two of the interesting things I saw was about how they were going to help preserve and restore some of the stuff that was partially damaged in the fire or with smoke. Did you see some of these stories? One was the late professor who had died.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was a professor of history or religion or something, but he had, or she actually, I forget, had scanned with a laser all the inside of the church, and so they have a laser scanning of the inside and what else was there. And also for the video game Assassin's Creed, one of the artists had taken detailed mappings of the inside of the church and all the artifacts that were in it. So good on humanity for those two things. But yeah, look, the church burned down. People want to get it built back up. Shut the fuck up.
Good of humanity to take those notes. I can only imagine how good it would have been to take as detailed a notes going back generations about the sex abuse scandal and the system that allowed that for many generations. Quiet voice.
Yeah, no, it's just architecture.
The Mueller Report. I don't know if I even referenced the Mueller Report. This is like the biggest, long-awaited, for people on the right and the left that identify as right-leaning politician following people or left-leaning politician following people. The Mueller Report didn't really do much for either side other than piss a lot of people off. Those are my thoughts. I have a couple of other ones. Did you get a chance at all to peek at that, Nick?
I'm done with the Mueller Report. Look, let's deal with the indictments that we got. Let's move past it. I had on some nightly news last night. It was like PBS nightly news or something, and I heard the word impeachment still thrown around a couple times. Like, it's done. It's over. Like, it's time to move on. So I'm going to put up a link to the Matt Taibbi piece. I don't know if you've seen that. It was from a couple of weeks ago when it was first came out that there was going to be no collusion with the president, and Matt Taibbi is not a conservative, but
he is not.
He was saying, shut the fuck up. He was basically saying the Mueller report, the Russian collusion was this generation's weapons of mass destruction. He was like, any Democrat that wants to keep down this rabbit hole or keep going down this narrative or want to keep going to impeachment, you're only doing yourselves more harm than good. The facts are out there. It was investigated by an independent commission to keep wanting to drag this thing on. It's not good for your brand. It's not good for the country. Just stop. That's what he said. Stop.
Yep. I will say this. Kudos to Mr. Mueller for what both sides agree, I think all sides agree, is a thorough factual report. And the last thing I'll say is that he did not dismiss the fact that there could be crimes, obstruction of justice crimes that are prosecutable if our politicians choose to go that route once Mr. Trump leaves office. I say put up or shut up as far as the Dems go. Either go indict some people and do what you should do, which is read the law and see if it was broken, or get over it and get back to being, what you were elected to be, effective leaders and allocators of capital and law in this country. Because, keeping this dialogue about collusion and everything else, it does nobody any favors.
Yeah, did you see this week Goldman Sachs said they see a path to Trump victory in 2020 because of all this? I mean, it has real world implications, especially because he got a bump from independents who were sort of on the fence about, was he colluding? Was he not colluding? And we get no collusion, and he gets a bump from the independents, which is how you win elections. So careful, 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 big D's.
Look, he won once and he can win twice. I remember George Bush Jr. after he won and all the debacles and the fuckery that went on there, which seems mild by today's standards, and everybody thinking, no way he's getting reelected. And sure enough, right? We got a second term that led to the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression. But not saying that'll happen here with Mr. Trump, but is it possible? You better believe it. You better believe it.
Well, hopefully the Democrats don't nominate Eeyore the donkey this time.
Oh, that's
Come on,
great.
folks.
Yep, that's great. Being president is tough, Nick. I see former President Barack Obama out there living his best life. He looks 20 years younger. He's out there on a jet ski. He's making millions, speaking all around the world. He looks like he's got a bop in his step. He didn't have that same swag, let's say. He didn't have that same demeanor and big smile full of joy when he was president. And just this week, we learned that Peru's former president allegedly killed himself instead of being arrested for taking bribes from a giant Brazilian construction company. He had denied the claims. Corruption, like in Mexico, is the norm in Peru. I think something like 94% of people polled in Peru said that they believe that corruption is out of control. Or the exact verbiage was, they believe the level of corruption in their country was either high or very high. But yeah, the military came to arrest him. They were going to indict him, arrest him, and lock him up and let him have his day in court. And he went into a room, shut the door, ironically had a gun that the military had gifted him, and decided to take that gun and end his life. So tragic on that front. But yeah, being president is tough. It's not a coincidence in Peru that the last 4 presidents, I want to say, have been, indicted or arrested. It's an absolute mess. 4 of the most recent presidents are either being investigated for alleged corruption. And a 5th, by the way, Alberto Fujimori, he's serving a prison sentence for corruption and human rights abuses. So, yeah, like Mexico, a lot to get in order, right?
Yeah, and my brain goes to the mining industry because have some investments there, so something to keep an eye on, and obviously a sad state of affairs.
Agreed. All right, Nick. Well, that's that's obviously somber. There's no winners in that. The populace has to deal with corrupt presidents over and over and over again. This gentleman's family has now lost, a father, son, uncle, and brother, and the politicians continue to fuck people over. So that's kind of somber. You got any feel-good stories for us this week?
I got to keep it somber for one more second. My brain jumped back to Notre Dame. Did you?
It's Notre Dame.
Do you think it's a conspiracy? Do you think it was?
You got to say it.
Do you think it was a Notre Dame?
There you go.
Do you think it was accident, or something more sinister?
Look, there's a pattern of Catholic churches being burnt up, lit up around the world, right? Not just in Europe. We've seen it here in the U.S. A lot of it has been underreported. They're saying it was a computer glitch. I saw that there was this very important group of bees at the very top of the cathedral that supposedly survived, and somebody called it a miracle. And I again, I don't mean to belittle anybody's religion or beliefs, but well, fuck, if that's a miracle, then why did this shit happen in the first place? And if it happened in the first place, is that what God wanted? And if it happened because of a computer glitch, like, is that really it? Or was there something more sinister going on? I don't have the answers to those questions, but a computer glitch, first they said an electrical shortage. Now they're saying an electrical shortage due to a computer glitch. I don't know, man. I am very distrustful of religion in general. So obviously when I hear that something as small as a computer glitch caused that level of devastation, I'll be watching, I'll be reading. I'm curious to learn more.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. Worthy of follow up and watching. A feel good story. We didn't get to talk about it last week. I don't know if it's a feel good, but it's definitely light and humorous. So there was this beach in France, in Brittany, where there were these Garfield phones, the fat orange cat phones. You know how people used to have phones like football phones and Mickey Mouse phones, and that was like a popular thing back when you had landlines, right? Yep. Different color, different kind of phones. Well, these Garfield phones had been washing up on this beach for over 30 years, for over 3 decades. And this community, this little tiny French community, had no idea where these Garfield phones were coming from. And just a couple of weeks ago, there was in some little remote island area off the coast, they were doing some litter cleanup, and they found this old shipping container in a sea cave that when the tide got just to the right level, it would let a couple Garfield phones slip out of the damage that had occurred to the shipping container. And so it had been bleeding out Garfield phones with the tide for over 30 years from the shipping container. I thought that was pretty funny.
That is hilarious. What are the odds?
Yeah, that they end up at the same place and that the tide creates the same conditions for it to come up repeatedly. It's not as odd as the feet that are being found in Canada. We'll talk about that in another episode. But yeah, stuff washing up on shores is weird.
Get Nick setting up the teaser for next week. What do you know about the feet coming out of where, Nick? Where are they coming from?
Well, that's the question.
Dun, dun, dun. Tune in next week, all 32 of you.
Yeah, that's right. But they're landed on Canadian shores, so I don't know.
I love it. Let's keep with the Good Friday, Easter weekend, a story of redemption that made me feel good despite the fact that I don't watch or play golf. But we got to talk Tiger Woods, man. This was a man that, as America and the world likes to do, was tore down, rightfully so in some aspects, having affairs with multiple porn stars, cheating on your wife in general is probably morally not the right thing for you or your family. He went through that. He went through multiple back surgeries. Everybody said he was an embarrassment to the circuit. He should never be out there again. And man, I got to give it to him as far as the sport goes and the accomplishment goes, to win a Masters after everything that he's been through and the way that he did it. Again, I don't follow golf, but man, the Tom Brady's of the world, the LeBron James of the world, the Serena Williams of the world, all the people that are, top of their game in their sport, the Michael Phelps, they all say it's the most amazing comeback. Michael Jordan said, I'm a Chicago kid, he said it was the most amazing comeback that he's ever seen in sports history. So kudos to Tiger Woods, man. That put a smile on my face.
So much to say. First of all, you reminded me of a couple more things. Michael Phelps was there.
He was front
You
row.
reminded me of that. So, that's right. So he was watching.
Probably celebrating 420.
That's right. I saw a guy there wearing a T-shirt of Tiger Woods' mugshot side by side of him in the green jacket, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Kudos to that guy. Fuck Michael Jordan. I don't know if you saw this or not.
Come on! The Chicago blasphemy, Nick. You're never going to Chicago with me. All right, I got to hear why. I'll give you that. I'll always listen to the why.
Because he said several years ago when Tiger was at his lowest that he would never make a comeback. There was a quote in the media, and I guess I should verify if it's true, but I'm pretty sure it's true, where Michael Jordan said, I don't know how to tell him because I love him so much. He's speaking about Tiger Woods. I love him so much that I don't know how to tell him that he'll never be great again. And so not really fuck you, Michael Jordan, but never count people out.
Never count people out. I'll agree to that. And again, it's a weekend and a week of redemption, Nick. So maybe Michael was trying to redeem himself, assuming what he said, what you say you said is true, right?
Right. And other than that, it was a fantastic thing to see. I watch the Masters every year. I don't know why, but I like to watch Saturday and Sunday. So I saw it happen live, and yeah, the fist pump and the red shirt was good to see. Brought back obviously nearly decade-old memories or more, right? So good stuff.
Yeah, really neat. And Tiger was here in Austin a couple of weeks ago for a tournament that he did, relatively well in. So yeah, congrats to Tiger and golf fans in general. Anything that, brings attention, it's a good thing, right? If it's positive.
That's right.
Robot umpires. I'm curious. Educate me, Nick. Talk to me. I get the feeling I'm going to have an opinion about this one.
Yeah, I knew you would. That's why I wanted to ask you. So, we're in the age of data, especially with baseball, Moneyball, and all that. So now we can analyze with machine vision, with computer vision, whether or not a ball is really a pitch, I should say, is a ball or a strike. And so we know with like 99% accuracy now that umpires miss 9.2% of the pitch calls. So basically,
they miss 23% of the pitch calls when it's a Cub involved.
So you got some bias, but yeah, basically they miss 10% of the calls, so just over 9% of the calls. Do you think, and a computer would not, so you'd get 100% accuracy on balls and strikes. Do you think a computer should call balls and strikes? Is my question.
So I am a traditionalist, but in this instance, the game is too important to get it wrong. So yes, I believe this is how there's a meeting of both the traditionalist and the new data junkies that are the ones that are getting it right. I think you keep the ump behind home plate and you feed him an earpiece and you let the computer call the balls and strikes, and you give the ump 3 overrides during the game, and then you make his override reviewable. And I think eventually they'll humble themselves into agreeing that's the right approach. I've given this some thought in case you didn't notice.
I see that. I haven't given it too much thought. My only rebuttal to that would be, why wouldn't you go to it for everything? Why wouldn't you go to digital rulings for everything? For balks, for did you tag the guy out on the pickoff play? Did the ball hit the ground? Whatever it is.
No, I think we should. I just still believe that we should allow the umps to be out there just for again, I'm also a traditionalist in the baseball sense, right? So I would like to still see the umps out there, but yeah, let's go completely digital. And then again, give each umpire, right? You got the first base line, you got the third base line, you got the home umpire, you got the outfield umpires. Give each of them, give them 3 calls or give them 2. Opportunities to override the machines and see if they get it right. And I think that's as good a approach to that question as any. And I think both the team playing home and the team playing away will be happy if what you're getting are accurate calls. And I got to believe that at the end of the day, the umps would be happy as long as they are able to continue to collect their check. And, we got to evolve. We got to grow, right? Let me tie it back into Lil Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus. And, there's trap drums on a country song. Does that not make it a country song? Well, country doesn't sound like what it sounded 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and it didn't sound like how it sounded 30 or 40 years ago. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for the truth and accuracy, and if big data is going to get us there, let's do it.
Yeah, my only thing is I think you got to go all or nothing. I don't want there to be ambiguity. I don't want human error for some part of the game and no human error for another part of the game. I don't think mixing it like that works.
Well, if you make the umpires overrides of the data subject to review with the machine, then I think we're all right, right?
Right. I'm with you. Yeah, I'm just saying for all calls though. It has to be for all calls, not just balls and strikes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, I agree. I'm talking base running. I'm talking foul
Yep.
balls. I'm all of it. I am
Yep.
all in with you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. I think we're both saying the same thing in a different way, Nick. I want all of it
That's
being
right.
that way. Absolutely. I want. Was that a foul? Was that a check swing? Was that a strike? Was that was that tag put on? Did he come off the base? I want all of it because there's nothing that's going to be as accurate as the technology we have now. We're just living in that day and age, and anybody that refuses to accept that, I think, is a dinosaur.
Right. I'm
Awesome.
with you.
Good, 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 good. What else
Can
do
I
we got?
can,
What else is on
can
your
I
mind,
talk?
Nick? Huh?
I want to talk about the Girl Scouts.
I love it. It is that time of the year. What do you got on your mind, Nick?
This was brought to me by Mr. John Lutz, in fact, who helps us behind the scenes do some stuff with the website and the podcast. And he was sort of like my boxing coach in the corner, saying, "Hey, you want to get riled up before you record the podcast? Why don't you read this article?" So I did, and now I'm riled up.
I love it.
So
Shout
I
out to
want to talk
Mr.
about it.
John Lutz and Timothy Hicks, who, guys, believe you me, they do all the bells and whistles behind the scenes to make this be presentable and somewhat coherent when we present it. So the ranting and the raving is me. The insightfulness and intelligence is Nick, and Mr. Tim Hicks and Mr. John Lutz are the two wizards behind the curtain that put it all and bring it all together and make it look good. So with that being said, let's see what John got you riled up about.
So the Girl Scouts are suing the Boy Scouts, and this is very complex. They're
Oh,
suing the
fuck.
Boy Scouts
I didn't
for
know, but I see where it's going.
for trademark infringement because the Boy Scouts are now allowing girls to be scouts. Do you see where we're going?
Yep.
And because they're letting girls be scouts, whenever you put girl in front of scout, that's a trademark infringement, notwithstanding the fact that there's some legal, let's say, questions around whether the fact Girl Scouts could even be trademarked because it's a descriptive generic term, sort of like shredded wheat. And neither Nabisco nor Kraft can trademark shredded wheat. They can both call their cereal shredded wheat because it's shredded wheat, just like a scout that's a girl is a Girl Scout. So that's just one part of the thing. The other part of the thing is that the Girl Scouts, quite frankly, are pissed that the Boy Scouts are letting girls in for for a couple of reasons. But one, Girl Scouts has evolved as an organization. They don't do camping fires anymore. It's really about college prep activities and badges that look good on a college application, coding, professional type development. So they don't like that they're getting competition from the Boy Scouts. Neither organization likes, I'm just going to rant for a bit, neither organization likes that no one goes to them anymore. There used to be 10 to 15% of the country, 10 to 15% of kids were a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout. It's less than half that now since the 70s.
Why do you think they quit going?
For the Boy Scouts, well, there was the whole thing with the Boy Scouts in the 90s and the 2000s about abuse, basically
That
sexual
might be
abuse
it. Okay.
from the scout
Yep.
the scout leaders. Yeah, and
yeah.
I have thoughts on that too. That was part of the story. It was because the Boy Scouts were tied so closely in with churches. So whereas a Girl Scout troop is led by an unpaid volunteer, normally one of the girls' moms, right?
Yep.
A Boy Scout troop is led by someone who sponsors the troop, and the troop, I forget the percentage, but the article I think said it was a majority. The majority of Boy Scout troops are sponsored by a church. So make the logical connection there yourself. And so this brings in all kinds of things, right?
Yep.
It brings in the Mormons. Why does it bring in the Mormons? Well, because they have like 500,000 boys in Boy Scouts, and they're saying if you let the girls and the homosexuals in, we're not gonna sponsor the troops, and we're gonna take our 500,000 kids out of it. It brings in big business and advertising dollars. Did you know that the Girl Scouts sold the second most amount of cookies in the United States, second only to Oreo?
I'm a sucker. Me and my
no
wife
one
buy them every time we see them at the store. Like, okay, here's our $25. Good job.
That's right. And the Boy Scout popcorn sucks and it's overpriced. So no one knows how much money the Girl Scouts make from the cookies. The last estimate that it was in the article quoted $700 million annually, but that was like a decade old number.
Wait till we start
And
celebrating 420 every year, Nick.
I can't wait. And so it's all just very interesting. I don't know who gets a fuck you here. The Mormon Church definitely gets a fuck you. The Girl Scouts get what are you doing? Just let the girls do whatever they want to do or whatever they and their families think is best for them or whatever wherever their interests lie. If they want to do the campy, outdoorsy, hikey thing, let them be a girl boy scout. If they want to do the college prep thing and sell cookies, let them be a girl scout. But everybody here gets a tisk tisk on the finger for a couple of reasons. One, hey, this is kids we're dealing with here. The guy who wrote the article that I read, which was on Bloomberg, which we could put a link to, said he interviewed dozens of kids for this story. And you know who was the only group that didn't have a problem with any of this? It was the kids. They don't care. They don't care if the girls are in Boy Scouts. They don't care if the boys are in Girl Scouts. They just want to have fun. They just want to do whatever they want to do. But also, you got to have some foresight and you got to plan right. So tisk tisk to the Boy Scouts for not doing this correctly, because when they allowed girls in, they didn't make the rules such that there could be girls and boys in the same troop. You have to have a separate troop. So think about this. If I have a son and a daughter and I want them to, they can't be in the same Boy Scout troop because they're not the same sex, even though Boy Scouts lets girls to be scouts. Do you see what I'm saying? They have to have a separate troop managed by a separate troop leader. So even though they can get Boy Scout and a girl, they can't be in the same troop as the boys. So all of you, get your shit together and make the kids happy, because this is all just some legal nonsense for nothing.
This is like Old Country Road or Old Town Road, whatever the heck the name of the song was, right? And adults being the cause of the bulk of the problem. And, you know, it's typically like the older adults that just haven't evolved with the times. Meanwhile, the kids just want to have fun, man. The kids just want to get along. So, yeah. I second the fuck yous and the get your shit together and figure it out. Yeah, that was pretty reserved
My
for
daughter,
you being riled up.
my daughter's favorite book right now is Fred and Ted, and Fred is tall and Ted is short, and they go away and they got to get a hotel room because they're tired, and the tall dog gets a small bed and the small dog gets a tall bed, so neither of them are comfortable and they can't figure out what to do. And so there's this little birdie that's just been watching it all go down, and the little bird is like, hey, why doesn't the tall dog sleep in the long bed, and why doesn't the short dog sleep in the short bed? Like, why are we making big problems out of little problems? That's how the story ends. Why make big problems out of little problems? Just switch beds, you fucking idiots.
Agreed. It really is simple most of the times. It's my father has a saying that I always remember and kind of try to live by. Like, life is pretty simple. It's the people that tend to complicate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do the right things,
Mm-hmm.
do the common sense things. It'll mostly go right. Doesn't mean things can't happen, but it'll mostly go right. It's people that usually fuck it up. And so, yeah, you want to hear something that got me riled up this week? And I'm not surprised. I didn't think it was going to be like this in your face, fuck you. This is how we do politics and justice around the world now. Although it is, again, I just didn't expect them to be so public about it. We talked Julian
What's
Assange
that?
last week, right? We talked
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that he was, in their Tom Hanks style, just caved up for the last 7 years or so, and that it was odd and interesting that, the Ecuadorian government finally allowed, him to be arrested within the actual embassy. And so now it comes out that the IMF executive board has just approved $4.2 billion for Ecuador with strings attached. They immediately will disperse 652 million US dollars, and they will support the Ecuadorian government's economic policies over the next 3 years. In exchange, they wanted Julian Assange. So we talked about him, I believe, last week. You also tied that into Chelsea Manning and the fact that, they're keeping Chelsea Manning in prison, who, of course, conveniently, will have to testify against Mr. Assange. And so a lot of fuckery there. But if anybody is unclear about global justice and the way it works, that's how it works right now, people. That's it.
Money talks.
That's all I have. Go figure out a way to work harder or smarter than other people and get yourself in a position to be okay, people, because the powers that be do not give a fuck when it goes down.
That's right.
Game of Thrones, Nick. Last time we spoke, you said that 2018 was miserable. You said it was miserable for the sole reason the Game of Thrones wasn't on, right? And so now we had the first episode. It broke all sort of streamings and viewership records. I didn't watch it. I don't watch. Every time I try, I get sidetracked with a million other things. How was it? Did it make you feel good? Was it the theme today is redemption? Did you feel like 2018 was redeemed and now 2019 is awesome?
No, but just to be clear, I didn't say that Game of Thrones was the reason 2018 was miserable. Like, I wasn't miserable in 2018 because of a lack of Game of Thrones.
I think I said it because it was funny.
One of the underlying causes that humanity was miserable in 2018 because there was no, you know how like alcohol is like the social lube that gets everybody going. That's sort of like what Game of Thrones is, right? For water cooler talk and taxi talk and you know, talking to the person next to you on the plane, train, bus, or whatever. And we didn't have any of that in 2018. So I think it was an underlying cause. I was underwhelmed, I have to say. I've talked about this with a couple of Game of Thrones diehards. Number one, it wasn't the advertised feature length. It was only 55 minutes long, so they starved me for over a year, and then they only fed me scraps when I was supposed to have an entree. And also there was like a 5 to 7 minute long flying sequence romance between Jon Snow and Daenerys that was just sort of like daytime soap drama kind of stuff that just rubbed me the wrong way. So, hey, it's early. I'm not throwing the whole season out. We got the Kingslayer back with Bran now. That's what ended the episode. The kid that he pushed out of the window that started this whole thing off, which is what got everyone hooked into watching this series, when, you know, he got caught fucking his sister and he pushed Bran out of the window. And so now he's seen him and he knows that he's alive, and hopefully it gets much better. See, it's the only show I watched, Gerardo. I pay attention to the details.
There's a lot
anyway.
riding on this season. I am rooting for you. I love the somber, almost resigned, hey, it's the first episode. I can feel the emotional investment you've made in this. I am rooting for you, man. I hope they knock the last season out the park. There's nothing like expecting an entree and not getting it. It's one thing if you don't think you're getting it, right? Vice versa with the dessert. There's nothing like you expect the dessert and you were told you were going to get dessert and then it's not there. It's another thing if you weren't anticipating it, you make do, not a problem. But yeah, it's very disappointing when you build it up, you're not able to capitalize on that buildup.
Well, and I'll tell you what kind of put me in a sour mood even before I watched it is, you know, for the whole day last Sunday before the new episode comes on, they run like all the episodes from last season, right? So like I told you I was going to do, I turned it on the HBO East so I could record it 3 hours early so I didn't have to wait till 9 o'clock when I was asleep. And so I caught like the last 15 minutes of the last episode of last season, and I was immediately pissed that the White Walkers had a dragon because they're not supposed to be able to go into water, and they went in the water with the chains to get the dragon, and it caused a logical clusterfuck in my brain, and I'm still not happy about it.
So you understand that to somebody like me who does not watch this show, everything you just said sounded so phenomenal. What was it? It was White Walkers and dragons and water, and that wasn't supposed to happen. And a logical clusterfuck. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, so the White Walkers can't touch water, and there was a dragon that had drowned in a lake, and they wanted to get the dragon so they could reincarnate it as basically a zombie dragon, like Jesus is going to be zombie Jesus this weekend. They wanted a zombie dragon, and they can't touch water, but somehow miraculously they got to the bottom of the lake to get this dragon to revive it. Ask me how they did that when they can't touch water. I don't like it.
They should have
Anyway.
saved that for Easter weekend.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Let me ask you a question, Nick. You know how
We'll
like
see.
when you get ready for a date, right? It's date night with the wife. Like, do you still get ready for date night with the wife? You throw the cologne on, you iron the shirt, put a little crease in the pants. Like, do you still do that?
I'm not a cologne wearer, but yeah, put on my nice pants, tuck in my shirt for once. We'll go to dinner. Sure, yeah.
I like it. So did you do that for Game of Thrones? Like, did you have a whole thing beforehand where you got ready and you got prepared?
I had a glass of scotch. I did. It wasn't a whole scene. My mother-in-law was still here, so we watched it with her. But I had a glass of. I did have a glass of scotch beforehand to settle
Nice.
the nerves, cozy up into it, and yeah. But that's it.
What kind of scotch?
Um, I've been drinking this Glenfiddich, which they're sort of flipping the script a little bit. So it's a kind of a trend now or popular to age beer in whiskey barrels. So you'll get like
Mm.
a beer that's finished in a whiskey barrel. So
Oh
this
yeah.
is the inverse of that. This is scotch that has been finished in a beer barrel. So it's Glenfiddich. I think it's called Project X. They're doing a couple of different kind of off the wall things, and it's quite good. A bartender gave it to me here when I was out with the wife. In fact, grabbed some lunch and enjoyed it. So picked it up at the liquor store, and it's quite good. Glenfiddich, aged in an IPA barrel.
There you go, everybody. Practical lifestyle advice. You want a good scotch? Go give it a go. And yeah, let us know what you think. I'm not much of a scotch drinker. I'm more of a occasional beer. Love my Cabernets on the wine side. Love some Tito's, of course. I'm here in Austin, right? So yeah. Good stuff. Well, Nick, we got two options. We're near the end of this podcast, right? We're gonna let people go and enjoy the rest of their week. We could either do a featured stock of the week, or we could do marry, date, kill the uranium version.
Marry, Date, Kill sounds much more fun.
It does. You ready?
Yeah, I guess that means I'm playing because that's how we did it last time. Let's do
That's how we're gonna do it every time, Nick.
it.
So marry, date, kill. We got Azarga Uranium. We got UEC. And we got
I don't like
Energy
this.
Fuels. Oh, this is so good on so many layers. On one hand, you got completely unhedged in UEC. On Azarga, you have one of the highest grades, if not the highest grade ISR deposits in the US. And in Energy Fuels, you have a company that, as of the latest reporting period, had over $52 million in cash, vanadium producer, uranium producer, instigator and initiator, along with your energy of the Section 232 report, which has now been delivered to the Trump administration and is expected to provide a big catalyst. So I will start marry, date, kill by saying all three of these companies are companies I follow, and if you are speculating or investing in the uranium space, you should probably own a little bit of each of them. We'll start there.
I was going to say, and all three are sponsors of Resource Digest, and all three are recommendations in newsletters I write. So, and clearly, I clearly like all three companies, recommend all three companies, and own or have owned all three companies at one point or another. So this is really tough.
Same here. That's why I picked those three, actually. We both have them in our newsletters. They're sponsors. We're conflicted. We're biased. We like all three of them. But like Game of Thrones, somebody's got to go. Somebody's getting married. Somebody's getting dated. And somebody's getting killed.
Yeah. I'm just thinking how I want to frame this. I thought you might give me an easy out, someone that I could kill easily, but that's not the case. Whew. I'm gonna, and this is opposite of what I've done with sort of my money at the moment. So what do I know? But I'm gonna kill Azarga off the bat because they got a really good project. High grade, large, undeveloped in situ project in South Dakota with a little terrace in Wyoming, and it's not permitted yet. And so I'm not going to take the risk of it not being permitted, of something not going well with Native Americans. And so let's just take it out of the equation, because with the other two, you have permitted and in some cases assets in production. So let's bring it down to Energy Fuels and UEC. Let's date UEC for the time being, because it's unhedged. We don't have to be attached to it. And if we get sort of any uranium bull market or any momentum as a result of a positive Section 232 decision, I think UEC is going to run hard and fast. I think Amir is going to promote hard and fast. And so I want to be with that girl who's going to run hard and fast in the short term. So let's date UEC and let's marry Energy Fuels for the long term. And that's sort of the advice I've given in my newsletter as well. In fact, it's above the buy price. We're not even buying it right now because we've been in it so long. Assets in production, both vanadium and uranium, largest uranium producer in the United States, which again isn't saying much. We don't produce all that much. But anyway, it is in production, has a mill, the only mill in the area. If anybody else wants to toll or produce whatever, process ore for vanadium or uranium. And so major exchange listed, et cetera, et cetera. And so there it is. It was hard, but that's my answer.
All right. Can I give you my bootleg psychoanalysis feedback that I always give you?
Sure.
So you killed.
That being said, let me do my one. That being said, for your money, the market cap, Azarga gives you the biggest shot at whatever you want, a 10 to 2500 bag or whatever, because it's 22 cents, etc. But that's just my caveat there.
I love it. You just added to my bootleg psycho feedback that I'm going to give you. So you killed off Azarga, right? You never know what you're going to get. When you get it, it's great. If you get it, it's phenomenal. But you never know what you're going to get. So you didn't like the uncertainty there. It's interesting that you chose to date UEC. You mentioned, hard and fast. You mentioned, or I imagined, UEC talks well. She presents well, right? And so, you can date UEC. You could take UEC wherever you want. You're always going to put the best foot forward as far as the presentation goes. And, it's interesting that you chose to marry Energy Fuels, because Energy Fuels provides a little bit of everything. You have stability, you have longevity, and Energy Fuels goes both ways. You got vanadium and uranium. Leverage to both.
I can join
right?
whatever girl or Boy Scout troop it wants.
Happy Easter, everybody. This is episode 15 of Bizarro World. Shout out to John Lutz, Tim Hicks, Mr. Nick Hodge. Thank you for your time. Anything you want to add?
River of glory, springs of our birth.
No rest for the wicked,
Flood
everybody.
Of God's riches poured on the earth. That's all I got, Gerardo.
Go be nice to everybody. Go love everybody. Love each other. Treat each other well. Be honest. Have fun. Have a great week, everybody.